BMW out of Munich. So they do an awful lot of the car work, but they also have an advanced communications group there. And they do a lot of work for the iDrive in terms of graphics, working on the different interfaces for the cars. And so Red Square, this wasn't for vehicles, but this was an interactive tool. Beware, all the content in here is faked. You'll see a lot of digital kitchen images used in here. But basically this tool is named after, in Moscow, the Red Square was a place where people could gather and meet. And so this was sort of pre-Facebook, the idea that you could have a place where all employees of DesignWorks could come and share their ideas about what could make the car better. So this is not what I did. This is the kind of sketches that the developers from Munich would send. So I was working with someone out of LA, the creative director. I was doing the visual work, and together we were trying to architect what the ideas were. So these are samples of some of the screens that we sort of have to scratch our heads and be like, are they trying to? So this was the final solution that David Young and I came up with, and this is essentially, if you think of like a My Yahoo kind of space where everybody could log in and have their own set of messages, bookmarks, ideas, and these were ideas that anybody from the company could contribute as opposed to being sort of top-down management. So if you had an idea for an all-fur steering wheel that vibrated, you could insert it into here and share it with people. You could see the news, recent posts. There was a lot of functionality included. You could explore topics and ideas. This was kind of a key area that we really worked on. And again, topics, think big. The interior of the car, the exterior. And you'll see here I'm using a lot of the DK images because I didn't know what they were going to end up using. But it's handy to have nice, good-looking images when you're working on a tool like this. So you could explore the topics. And this was where I must have spent a good week trying to figure out the view and sort by. So you could view these by keyword, by when they were created, and then is it the last 7 days, the last 2 weeks? You could find out which comrade had contributed. So they were using comrade instead of friend because it's Red Square. And you could select a topic and go in, and within that, you could get this overview. Some of the challenges we had are, is it in English, is it in German? What if some people need to see both? So how do you deal with that? You could vote on a topic if it wasn't the one you created. You could forward it, bookmark it. Some of this seems so basic and fundamental as a user, but when you're actually trying to figure it out, at least David and I, it was sort of like a long time. I was working on this project at the same time that I was working on the Mary Hill Double. So it'd sort of be like one day Headspace, architect, next Headspace, this. So you can also explore ideas, and ideas sat within topics. So within interior, there could be a whole bunch of different things. And the way these were organized was, again, it's a little bit like what the TED website does, where images are sorted by popularity and they're scaled differently. You could roll over and get a little bit of information, click to go in, and again, similar structure in here. You have all these different assets. You could vote. There's a project description. People could comment or rate it. So there must have been 50 or 60 screens that I was making for this particular thing. So a few more images that I'll show you. I don't need to explain these, but prominent designer Charles Eames said, "The details are not the details, they make the design." My own practice embodies this statement. No part of a project is too small for design consideration. Whether it's sorting through thousands of images to find the right combination, setting the perfect block of copy to enhance readability, or architecting a web space, pixel by pixel, to make a user's experience seamless and intuitive, my goal is to find a balance between creative expression and functional design. I like the challenge of clarifying complex information and distilling key ideas into visual form. My approach is very considered, and design decisions are based on a careful examination of the content and project goals. I have been fortunate to work with several prominent organizations and companies on projects with varied and interesting subject matter, and I look forward to continuing my relationships with them and creating new ones. So enough about me. Let's talk about my students. So before I moved up to Seattle, I was doing adjunct teaching at Art Center College of Design and Otis, which are both in LA. And then these are some of the recent classes that I've taught. One of my favorite classes to teach is publication design. And we've done some different types of projects in here. I pulled from the TED conference a lot. I don't know how many of you are familiar with TED, the Technology, Entertainment, and Design. There's a wealth of information there, particularly because there's so many speakers that are out there, so much information about it. So we've done projects from that. This is one particular project that a grad student did at the time. This was just a project to promote the TED conference itself. And so I'd give them a fixed amount of information, like here's the mission, here's the background and the goals, then find 3 speakers that you want to highlight. So some of the information they pulled themselves. And beyond that, the problem becomes, like, how do you create, again, an interesting system that can house a variety of information? Here's another project that was done. This was not for the same one. This is where we actually created magazines related to the TED Prize. And so each year, I don't know if you're familiar, but TED gives $100,000 to 3 different people who are TED Prize winners. And then they get a wish, and that wish can be anything they want, whether it's, to build sustainable housing for all, or enhance, improve readability or education. So what would happen is that the students then made their own wish in class, and then they had to give it away to someone else in the class. So you got a wish, and then you had to figure out, well, who's going to be your TED Prize winner. So the wish that Ronald got was for a world that views disabilities, mental or physical, not as a hindrance. And, happens that I like Oliver Sacks, but he chose Oliver Sacks. And beyond that, they had to create a publication. They had to come up with all the articles that were in it. So the challenge is, how do you find articles of varying lengths? Some have images, some don't. How do you create an interesting system for that? They could name their publication, so I think he named it Shift. Comp programs is another class I've taught. This is at the junior level. This is usually centered around how do you create a conference, a mock conference of some kind, or even a real conference in the case of Kai. But this was done by Ben Schoen. We did the Seattle International Film Festival. It's here in Seattle. It runs 3 weeks. It's the longest running film festival in the country. And as you can imagine with any film festival, there's a whole lot of different genres, different directors, different topics. So how do you create a system that can, reach all of those? So here's the poster, the idea behind this being, great things are coming. This was the environmental component. He did a bunch of other things, a bumper, t-shirts, buttons, that sort of stuff. But this got into Type Directors Club, which is really great. This was hand-done typography for him. Another solution out of the same class, this was this idea of, and I didn't give them a theme, they came up with their own theme. But this was sort of like characters are coming. So he found all these really great old illustrations, and sort of here they are marching along, all heading to SIF. And then a few of the sample t-shirts. And what I really like about teaching here and just in my own practice is that I don't push any sort of a particular aesthetic, at least I hope that I don't. And so these 2 very different solutions that are both totally viable can come out of the same class. And that's what's really exciting for me as an educator. This was for last year's project, and this was actually a real project. So CHI, which is the Conference on Computer-Human Interaction. This is the largest, most prominent, it's the premier kind of interaction conference that happens every year. And it's run by a group of people, the 2 people that were chairing it were out of Microsoft, and they came to us and said, can someone design the conference identity for us? And we'll pick one. So we used it as a class project, and then they were in a bunch of the critiques and ended up choosing one of the directions. But the theme here was connecting, so they'd already come up with the theme. So the idea being, again, similar to SIF, you've got a whole bunch of different people coming to give different topics, all different, relationships to computers and human interaction. I think all the students somehow have the same file. It's a nice high-res file that you can put your images. I don't know where they got it from. But this was actually the design that was picked, and I must say there were a lot of really tremendous solutions that came out of the class, and I think they had a hard time picking, but this was the direction that was chosen. And it's a really nice lock-up of the CHI in 2011. And actually what was interesting about this was it's being held at the Vancouver Convention Center, which is this really beautiful building. But what Cole did was to create the imagery was there's a little bit of an element of chance in that he took, I think I'm getting this right, the JPEG and would drag it into text edit, and it became just text. And then he would cut away or remove part of the text, and that would reorient the image. So there was a sort of this element of chance that maybe I appreciate just after doing those form studies that I did. So this was the lockup, which is a really nice, solid lockup for the 2011. So this was if they had the papers that would go, all the papers that are submitted, this would be the disc. They had to do, Cole's design has been selected, so the conference is actually in May, I think it is, so Cole, through the winter and part of this year is going to implement the rest of the stuff. So this is actually a real tangible design, and it's good to be promoting UW. They were super excited with all the work. Here's the website. It's not exactly what Cole designed, but this is live, so I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted the logos. You don't want the logos quite that big. So you take it where you can get it, but this is live if anybody wants to see it. It's chi2011.org. Senior projects, this many of you are going to enter this year, but this is a class that students have at the end of their final year, and this is where basically they could do whatever they want. And a couple of years ago, Joey Flynn, he never told me this until I was maybe in this class, that he's colorblind. And so he wanted to do a series of posters or a mock lecture series on all the different types of color deficiencies. So it's a remarkably simple solution. Basically, the poster's been flipped, if you can see that. But it's Roy G. Biv, what we see, people who aren't colorblind, or most people, and then the particular kind of color deficiency, what they would see. So here's the relationship, there's a connection. And there's something like 8 different color deficiencies. So I flipped them all so you can see this is what people, the top version is what people with different types of color deficiencies. And he created this under the guise of a mock discussion on color perception that was going to happen at the Walker Art Center, so he chose who the speakers were going to be. And this got into Type Directors Club too. And they were huge, huge posters, but it was a great, incredibly simple solution, and he went through umpteen iterations to get to this, but it was a nice solution. This was done back in 2004. This was a poster series done by May Swarm, and she was really, this was at the height of the Iraq War, so here she was kind of talking about Bush administration's relationship to oil. So she did a series of posters that were basically each, Condoleezza, Cheney, and Bush, their heads shooting out of a balcony. And not only did she make the posters, but she put them up around town, and then she documented what happened. And she has all these great photographs of people ripping them down. One guy told her they were blasphemous. But then there were other people that wanted copies of them. And I remember in critiques, they were pretty heated critiques at the time. And she was really nervous about, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know whether I should go out there. And we kept sort of saying, yes, you have to try, you have to take a chance. And I think it was really great to see her do that and to know, first of all, that you can create something that has an impact. I was telling the juniors today, like one of the worst critiques I think I had at Cranbrook, because again, you're putting up your own work, is you put it up and no one says a thing. And it's sort of like, that's almost worse than if people can at least say, I love it or I hate it. So I applaud her for doing this and having the guts to do it.